Have you ever seen someone fall and instead of helping, people laughed? Now, imagine if that someone was your mother, your sister, your younger self. That's what happened to 67-year-old Margaret until a stranger's hand changed everything. It was a windy Thursday afternoon in early October. The town square was lively with children laughing, vendors calling out their specials, and neighbors enjoying the last warmth of fall. Margaret Langley, a retired elementary school teacher, walked gingerly across the cobblestone plaza with her reusable tote bag and a gentle smile. She wasn't in a rush. She rarely ever was these days. Life slowed down after Richard, her husband of 41 years, passed away last spring. A group of teenagers sat on the ledge by the fountain, scrolling through their phones, laughing loudly. Margaret paid no mind. As she stepped down from the curb, her worn shoe caught the edge of a loose stone. Her body twisted, arms flailed, and in one heartbreaking moment, she fell hard. There was a sharp crack from her wrist. Her glasses slid off her face, and the contents of her bag, an apple, a prescription bottle, and her knitting yarn scattered across the pavement. A beat of silence followed. And then, laughter. Not from one, but from 3 of the teens near the fountain. Did you see that? She went down like a sack of potatoes. Someone get a replay. Margaret, dazed and embarrassed, tried to sit up, wincing. Her vision blurred with tear snot from the pain in her wrist, but from the sting of humiliation. And still, no one came to help. Until a soft voice broke the noise. "Don't move, I've got you." It came from a young man with messy hair, maybe in his mid-30s. He kneeled beside her, gathering her things with care and gentleness. With surprising strength, he helped her to her feet and guided her to the bench nearby. "You're safe now," he whispered, steadying her trembling hand. Have you ever felt invisible in a moment when you needed someone to simply see you? The man pulled out his phone and called for an ambulance without asking for permission. He just knew it was needed. His name was Jake. That's all he offered at first. While they waited, Jake sat beside Margaret on the bench, shielding her from the cool wind with his coat. "I'm so sorry," Margaret murmured, barely audible, "for causing a scene." Jake looked at her like she'd said something absurd. "You didn't cause anything. You fell, and people failed you. That's on them, not on you." She turned her head, blinking at him. His words were like medicine, unfamiliar, but healing. The ambulance arrived quickly, and Jake rode with her, holding her uninjured hand the entire time. She wanted to protest it. Wasn't necessary, but something in his presence calmed her like no one had since Richard. At the hospital, Margaret was diagnosed with a fractured wrist and minor bruising. Before she could ask him to leave or thank him, Jake was already speaking with the nurse, making sure someone was called to check on her at home. When she asked for his number, he smiled, shook his head gently, and said, "Just get better, Ms. Langley. That's all I want." And then he was gone. Why do the kindest people sometimes appear just once, but leave a mark forever? Margaret couldn't get him out of her mind. Over the next few weeks, as her wrist healed and the bruises faded, the emotional wounds lingered. Not just the fall, but the laughter, the betrayal of her community's silence. But Jake? He became a symbol in her mind, symbol of the good still left in the world. Her friend Claire urged her to write about the experience on the community Facebook page. Reluctantly, Margaret did. "To the young man who helped me when I fell by the fountain. I didn't catch your full name, but you were a light in a very dark moment. If anyone knows who he is, please tell him. Thank you." The post was shared 183 times, comments flooded in. People were outraged at the teen's behavior. Some remembered Jake from years ago. He once helped a lost dog. Others said he worked odd jobs, but no one had seen him lately. 2 weeks later, Margaret received a message from a local cafe owner. "I think I know who you're talking about. Jake volunteers at the shelter every Tuesday." Margaret made her way there, cast still on her wrist, heart pounding. She found him folding blankets for the new arrivals' dogs and humans both. He looked up, surprised. "Miss Langley?" She smiled. "You gave me your coat. I thought I could at least return your kindness. Have you ever wanted to thank someone, but didn't know how much their kindness truly meant?" Over warm coffee and old stories, Margaret learned more about Jake. He had been homeless for nearly 6 months. An injury at work, a pile of hospital bills, and then eviction. Jake had no parents, no partner, no fallback. He never told her because he didn't want pity. And yet even in his own crisis, helped her without hesitation. "I've been staying at the shelter," he admitted, "trying to find my footing again." Margaret blinked back tears. You helped me when no one else would, while you were struggling silently." Jake shrugged. "Everyone needs someone. That day, I just happened to be someone." She squeezed his hand. The next morning, Margaret did something bold. She returned to the fountain, stood near the same ledge, and addressed the small crowd that often gathered. "I was humiliated here, but someone turned that moment into hope. His name is Jake. He needs us now." That afternoon, something remarkable happened. Jake was offered a part-time job at the cafe. A retired neighbor offered him a room to stay in, and a former student of Margaret's set up a fundraiser that gathered over 90 in 3 days. Kindness didn't just ripple, surged. What if every time someone helped you, you helped someone else in return? 2 months later, Margaret and Jake walked side by side through the town square this time, with no fear of falling. Jake now managed volunteer efforts at the shelter and had even begun taking community college classes. Margaret, inspired by her own story, started a weekly kindness newsletter, sharing stories of good deeds in her town. They weren't family, they weren't related, but somehow they became each other's second chance. One winter evening, Margaret asked him, "Why did you help me that day?" Jake smiled softly. "Because when I was younger, I fell too, and someone once helped me up. I guess I've just been returning the favor." The wind blew gently through the trees, rustling the last of the autumn leaves. And in that moment, they both knew one fall had changed 2 lives. Forever. If this story moved you, please consider liking and subscribing to The Kind Story. Every share helps bring kindness to someone who may desperately need it. When was the last time you reached out a hand, not because you had to, but simply because it was the right thing to do? Disclaimer: this story is an original work for The Kind Story, created by human writers with AI assistance for formatting or narration. It reflects real-life inspired emotions and adheres to YouTube's community guidelines and monetization policies.